Hope
Hello,
everything works. How are you doing?
Good, good. My house is like 3 degrees because I didn't turn on heating when I left this morning for classes. But other than that, I'm great.
I think it's good for the brain. The colder, the
Probably
better.
not mine, but that's okay.
Yeah. So just to check, you don't have any echoing effect on your side, because
No
I
echoing.
also
I don't
headphones
hear
this
any
one.
echoing.
So we're meeting again. We're continuing the Eliade conversations, but today we wanted to make it a little bit more casual or cozy, or hygge,
Yes.
because I'm in Denmark, and
Or
have some.
what? Rewind. What was that
Okay,
word?
so it's a Danish concept. It's spelled Hygge, and you see even books all over the place, especially as souvenirs. People buy them. You find them even in Romania. You find them in other countries outside of Denmark. It basically means cozy, but it's encapsulating this whole Danish, let's say, darker season lifestyle, but all year round. Because Danes are really good at creating this um, cozy, comfortable, really nice atmosphere to compensate for the lack of light, and
I
also for
thought you
the
coughed. I thought that was you coughing. I didn't know that
well,
was. Can you repronounce the word?
hygge, or
Ah, wow, fancy.
but yeah, my pronunciation is probably not that good. I should. It's rather German, but yeah, it's ubiquitous. But yeah, I want to just see you've been really busy. People know you probably. Some people probably don't know you.
Yes.
Uh, you are a student of Eliade and other
Yes, so
interesting things.
I have no formal accreditation. Always put that out in the videos. It is entirely your choice to listen to me or not as the audience. But I do take a very deep interest in Eliade's scholarship, in a lot of what he was interested in. Right now, I'm working on a very large and exciting project that I'm going to keep under wraps for a while. But it is about alchemy and Eliade. In the future, you might be seeing that. And then I guess just as a professional announcement, I don't know how many people are aware of what the Ciceronian Society is, but the Ciceronian Society is having a conference in Nebraska at Creighton College in America, and I've been invited. I'm on the official program, and I will be presenting a paper on a Eliadean reading of H.P. Lovecraft and his works of fiction. So that's forthcoming. That's very exciting. It's happening in March, I think. Yeah, I believe it's happening in March. So yeah, I just got the news back on that, so I'm very excited about that. But yes, I'm a history student, last year of university. So just kind of working on all of that and seeing, who knows, maybe graduate school will take me.
That's fascinating. Is that a rhetoric society, or is just promoting classical education? Because it can sound like
Let me read the description to you. So the Ciceronian Society. Let me get there really quick. So it's associated with like conservative and religious circles um, in America. So let me read to you. It's preface. The Ciceronian Society exists to equip and encourage Christian scholars to serve the church as a center of cultural and civic renewal. Through our events, publications, and podcasts, we provide the space and opportunities that Protestant, Catholic, and Orthodox scholars need for professional growth and intellectual discipleship. So it's very much like a cohort style thing, a professional academic conference, but that'll be happening. I believe it's a Roman Catholic college in Nebraska, Creighton College or Creighton University. So yeah, very excited about that.
that sounds really exciting. That's something we could put in the description or
Yeah.
later on in the comments so people can check it out. That's really fascinating. Obviously, I don't have a background in this. I just grew up reading Romanian literature, and I was always kind of fascinated by Romanian. We don't really have a philosophical school, but we have really prominent intellectuals, not just on the national but international scene. And I was always fascinated by this. I'm obviously the artist behind Classical Odyssey, and yeah, I just finished a PhD in the broader field of geoscience. Thank you very much.
Bravo, bravo.
I couldn't hold it in for longer. Like I had to spit it out.
No, it's good. It's awesome. Congratulations.
No, thank you very much. It's surreal actually, because you know, like I think a lot of PhD students have this overwhelming feeling, especially the last 2 years, that you're never going to finish. This is all nonsensical. Like you're losing your life, your time, everything. It's
Thanks for selling it to me. I'm so excited.
yeah, it's just pure nihilism, fatalism, determinism, all these bad things. But then you overcome them and you realize that they're not true. It's good. It's
Okay. Are you
cathartic.
okay? Are you
I don't
are
know.
you
I
recovering
don't know.
okay?
Let's see. I don't know how you get just.
Nihilism, fatalism, determinism. Okay. All right.
No, but I said, but then you overcome them and you realize that they're not true in the end. So
Yeah,
it's good.
of
It's a
course.
redemptive ending. Yeah, if you manage to finish it. But I mean, not you specifically, just in general, because I had a lot of colleagues who just quit, halfway, or they did
Seriously?
80%, yeah, 80% of the work and they just ran away. It's
Oh.
yeah,
And
it's
you pay
almost like
money for this, no? Or is it fully funded?
it really depends. It depends on the I think it really depends on the university. It depends on your admission grade. And I
Ah,
got scholarship. So I basically had kind of a salary for 3 years. That's how much you're granted. But then
okay.
because of the pandemic and the other administrative issues, I had to prolong it. So I finished it in 5 years, which is kind of normal. This is how a STEM PhD normally used to be.
Uh-huh.
Um, my mom, she was, it's not by choice. She did a PhD in 7 years because
Oh,
that
wow.
was obligatory. That's how long it took, and she had to have, I think, more than a decade professional experience in her field.
Oh, wow.
Um, but my mom is a PhD engineer, so like we're not even talking
Right.
about it. It's quite intimidating, but that was that was difficult.
Well,
So
congratulations. Do you wanna talk about your thesis?
well, yeah, if you, I thought I could share some things that might be,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're of any interest. So I think I kind of mentioned maybe I should make another video. I could talk about it and I can make some connections with classical Odyssey and art in general, and also Eliade, because I think subconsciously I think I was very much influenced by Eliade. I had a very unusual topic in my thesis. I worked with complexity theory and a little bit of chaos theory in the beginning, which sounds really abstract, but then when you take it and you apply it in a case study, you get to do really cool research, and it's really, I mean, you don't lose yourself in abstractions. It's very much connected to reality, and it has a good
Right.
outcome that has some really good practical relevance, I would say. But I have some things that I brought because I wanted to show you, because I think we talked a little bit about this before. So this, I have three of them. This is a German kind of notebook that has been my, let's say metaphorically, my best friend. It looks like this. I can archive them. I don't think you can see this.
Oh, that's
I
pretty
do it.
cool.
It has stickers, and you can write the index inside, like the pages are numbered. And this has been the greatest thing for
Oh,
my
wow.
PhD thesis. I have two of these. Like I wrote everything, my entire PhD thesis of 290 pages almost. It was written by hand, all of
Oh,
it.
wow.
Which when I look back, I find it quite hard to believe. But it was so good because I think
Mm.
you hear from everybody who writes longhand that it's exactly the rhythm that you need to think clearly and formulate sentences that are coherent, and it reduces editing by, I don't know, I think it's the most efficient way of writing. um, Also my brain works very differently when I write. I think it's also because when I draw, I don't know, it feels like if I write something down, I memorize it better, and I also think it better. I think
Yeah.
much more deeply about it. And yeah, I have one of these too. I wanted to share a little bit about my working process because I think it's a little bit unusual. So they also look like this,
Oh my gosh.
and Yeah, it's been 5 years of hard work, but this I would recommend to absolutely anybody who has to do a lot of research, long-term, sustained academic effort. It's been working wonders for me. So yeah, I don't know if you have any questions because I have some tools here to showcase.
I have many questions. So one, what is you kind of alluded to it, but what were some of the outcomes of your thesis? Because obviously you defended it successfully. You are a doctor now. So I guess what is the importance of your field? Because you said it's a little more maybe a little more out there, maybe a little more esoteric to some of the other stuff that you do. How do you connect some of the stuff in your PhD over these 5 years to the artwork that you do, to the liberal arts part of you?
Wow, so that's a question I should have prepared for it because I have you know when you talk so much about a broad subject, you research it for many years, you tend to forget the most important things because your mind is scattered continuously trying to grasp all these
Yeah.
notions. So because I've been repeating the same things over and over and over again, you know, in my studies, I might not give you the perfect, not the perfect, the optimum answer because there's no
It's
such
totally
thing as a
fine.
perfect answer. But um, so what I did was like my main theme was, let's say, the main subject of my study was social ecological systems in mountain areas. If you've never heard of social ecological systems, it might sound a little bit posh, maybe annoying, but the ecology as a field of science, geography and geology operates with a lot of mathematics and physics, and you know, like it's STEM science. And ecological systems have been studied over the years, and you have these patterns that you study. You make these 3D representations of population dynamics, and you start to see certain patterns that not only apply to the natural world but also apply to society. So what
Mm,
I did was studying historical memory of complex systems. So if there
mm,
was like an impact in the past, not in the distant past, because I wanted to choose something that I have records of documentation. For instance, I had very invasive and aggressive mining exploitation of a whole area during communist times. So it changed the whole structure of a mountain massive. The top of the mountain was blown up. The whole area, like the societies, the human settlements around it, they have a long history
mm,
of mining there. And it's a continuous history. I would even go back to, I mean, you have mining since the age of the Romans, and then you have mining like in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Austrian Empire there. So the local culture is very much determined by the resources and the microclimate and the microenvironment. They have their own sense of identity. They have their own sense of like ethos,
yeah.
like special mountain people. So when things like these like this happens, you know, like blowing up the top of a mountain, you change the whole hydrographic network. People who practice traditional agriculture or grazing, they're affected because the water is contaminated and so on. And these are, let's say, concrete facts. But on the long term, you see that population that had to remove itself from the area, but still some were, let's say, decided to remain there and they kept their identity. And social ecological systems looks at environments, natural environments that have been historically impacted by human practices, and now they're so shaped by human practices that they can no longer exist if those practices disappear. So environment depends on the human communities, and the human communities depend on the environment, which kind of moves the placement of humans as, you know, we either are subjected or victims of nature, we're equal with nature, or we're under, you know, we have this inferior position, mother nature, you know, this is kind of the evolutionary worldview. So now you see this, the role of man from a philosophical point of view, that it's actually much deeper than we think, because some areas they could do a lot better if there's human intervention, cleaning forests or controlling
Right.
certain populations. There's so many variables like climate change, like people have allergy to the concept of climate change, which is something ever since, I mean, ever since we have recorded history, climate is a pendulum.
It's always changed.
It's like exactly like a pendulum. We alternate continuously between ice age, small ice ages, like colder ages, and hotter seasons. So these are normal things. So what I wanted to study is how I can look at this area that has this cultural identity. People are still dependent on the environment, but these bad things happen. How can I evaluate, assess, and predict the resilience? So let's say the resilience at this moment, and how can I make projections? Can we still continue the economy in its current shape and form sustainably? So what I did was basically I used a lot of data. I had a lot of data, hydrological data, demographic data, and I managed to interpret it with some interesting combination of statistical methods. So I could look at patterns and thresholds. So I take, let's say, because my thesis was more about complex systems and how can you analyze resilience of complex systems. Please interrupt me if I talk too much, because now I'm just
No. Go
unloading a
for
lot.
it. Keep going. Keep going.
So it was more like a heuristic, what I wanted to come with,
Interesting.
to suggest a framework of thinking about resilience, because we all live in systems, but these systems, they have fuzzy borders. We're intertwined, interconnected with everything. And so you have this cause and effect dynamic, but every effect or phenomena that you witness today has multiple causes. Like every complex issue does not have one cause.
Right.
And it applies to almost everything. You think about, capitalism is at fault for, I don't know, the dissolution of like traditional family. Well, not really. It's not just that. It's a lot of things that are beneath that. It's not just capitalism,
Right.
it's human nature, certain events, philosophical worldview shifts. So I looked at previous methods and how people treated them. I saw that they treated complex issues as linear issues, like simplistic, one cause, one effect.
Interesting.
Where I looked at these things again, I said, no, these are multiple causes with complex effects. And I wanted to offer a balance between the reductionist approach, which Eliade really criticized a lot.
Right.
There's a connection there, and a holistic approach. So you need both. They're not antithetic, which a lot of scientists, they either or, they kind of present them
Right.
as polarizing views, but you have to make use of both of them. And in the end, I did this, I used code, and I managed to model this 3D landscapes. It's like a swing in a 3D space, and there's like a ball in the middle, and that ball gives you a coefficient of resilience. And I had a statistical method in the end as the main contribution.
That's
And
very interesting.
I realized that whatever we do in the end, the population is the most vulnerable. Like, we are like most vulnerable because everything that we do, has this effect. But it was also interesting, the historical memory. Like we can make this bridge to Eliade later on. There's a historical memory in systems. It's like magnetism, magnetizing, demagnetizing. That's how it was initially studied in physical systems or ferromagnetic systems. It's called hysteresis. That's a really interesting phenomena. And I noticed that at a larger scale, like ecological scale, like social scale, people started writing about it actually, because Romania is still a post-communist society. It hasn't
Yeah,
really recovered
absolutely.
from communism. It has that mark. So our trajectory is never going to be the same with West Germany's trajectory or UK's trajectory, because that's an empire. We can never have the same path. So you have to operate with that understanding, like historical understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Absolutely. That's sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, sorry, because I have some things about art, but that's like probably too much.
Well, why don't we get to it in just one second? I was going to comment, especially on what you said about holistic versus reductionist tendencies, and to connect it to all the scholarly work that both of us have been doing. A lot of like Mircea Eliade is one of his early. He says one of the passions of his youth was the study of alchemy, and obviously he goes on to write a whole book about alchemy, The Forge and the Crucible. And one of the things in The Forge and the Crucible that really stands out, especially in regards to the sciences, in regards to the some of the fields that you've been studying, is that Eliade remarks how so many of the modern sciences they think they define themselves holistically because, well, science is it. That's it. Materialist, mechanical sciences. You'll find the sum total of everything that's true in the universe in this. But historically, alchemy, the sciences, chemistry, there has always been that part of it which has to do with the metaphysical, because that was the holistic view. Have the mechanical, but understand that the mechanical must also correspond to a higher spiritual truth. The particulars cannot exist without the forms. The forms hold the particulars together and inform them of what they're supposed to be. And that's why he places, his one book on alchemy. He places alchemy, which a lot of people say is, the forerunner to chemistry. That's when everyone was stupid and they believed in fairies and they thought that the gods influenced things. It's very much no. Chemistry is the reductionist view. Chemistry is a new thing that leaves the human enterprise of alchemy. Homo alchemicus. It's part of his, Homo religiosus. It's underlying current to all of that. So it's very interesting what you're saying with the reductionist and the holistic part. And then I guess just for Romania, and Romania being in it. Oh, hold on. My computer is about to. Please don't die. Give me 1 second. I think my computer is.
No, we can start it over.
Okay, hold on. Here we go. There we go. I'm an old man, and I unplugged my computer on accident. Okay, back. Sorry. So about Romania and its current course and its trajectory, I think a lot of people, just to connect that to Eliade, a lot of people, I think one of the biggest accusations or biggest critiques of Eliade, he's an Orientalist. He studies the Far East because it's superior to Europe, and he studies the Far East because he's Romanian. And, there's that famous Slavoj Žižek video where he's like, the Slovenian says the Balkans starts in Croatia. The Croatia says, no, this is civilization. It starts in Serbia. Serbia looks towards Greece and says, no, that's where the Balkans start. And obviously the Frenchmen and the Englishmen and et cetera, until you reach the end of the world and we're in Japan. And I think that's a lot, like, not to criticize Western European society. That's not what this is. But that's one of the harder things about maybe a view of European Union, not the European Union. Hear me when I say that, not the organization, but the idea of like a federalist Europe or a spiritual destiny for all of Europe. Romania didn't have the Enlightenment, not in the same ways that France and England and Great Britain experienced these things. And so there will always be a different metaphysical destiny. That doesn't mean they're not intertwined, because ever since Christ was incarnated, right? Europe, places that have accepted Christianity from earliest times, and really the face of the world, if you want to acknowledge it or not, is informed by that Christian worldview. And so there's a whole separate metaphysical destiny than there was even 2,226 years ago. So sorry, continue. Link it to art. That was just
that was wonderful. I like that. I didn't interrupt the train of thought on Eliade and greater things. Now I lost. Probably wasn't that important. No, it was. So I had the two main contributions. One was let's say the hard science part, and the other one, which I don't like, soft science, because that's actually the foundation.
Can you define those two terms for us?
Well, I think, I'm not sure. I mean, this is mostly in German language that I'm familiar with these terms. When you talk about hard science, you talk about quantifiable data. And then when you talk about soft things, it's more qualitative approach to, it's more of a qualitative approach to the analysis or the methods used in the research process. But so my thesis had that, like what I told you, is like the 3D modeling landscape, resilience landscapes, that's how I call them. By the way, this will be published. It takes a long time. It was accepted for publishing before I finish my PhD.
Awesome, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you're going to be raking in the big euros.
I'm not sure, but I will make the PhD thesis. Hopefully I'm going to publish it in Integral, like in Extensis, so all of it.
Oh, lovely.
I actually have to, because I had to sign a contract that I'm I'm publishing it within 24 months, so it will be published anyways.
Oh, wow.
I'm just looking for the, I don't know, optimum opportunity in terms of
Yeah.
publishers. But I also had like a, let's say a philosophy of science part, and that was I had an idea that I developed like while I was sitting at a breakfast table, and I was just thinking about what I'm gonna do with all the data that I have. Because my problem was I had an overload of data, and I had all my mentors. So I had the professor, you have mentors and you have your coordinator, and everybody had his own idea that contradicted the others. And
Mm.
so I couldn't split myself in five. I had to kind of
Yeah.
shut it somehow and do it my own way, because I thought I'm going to lose my mind at some point, because everybody wanted me to go do this, do more geomorphology, do more, I don't know, air quality, more hydrology, more this, more that. So I also had that contribution, which I said, and I did a modeling, and I'm not going to say too much about it because it has to be published and I'm not allowed. But this is like a modeling.
Keep your secrets. Keep your
It's
secrets.
like it's a modeling inspired by fractals, by the cell, the human cell, which is exactly the same. It's in itself a fractal that repeats itself. You can see the planets, the Earth with its core is the same. So I looked at these physical patterns and fractals in nature, and I saw that there are fractals also at a level of phenomena. So it's kind of the same
Mm.
relations in a system. So this modeling, when I put down the principles and I read Mandelbrot, I read all the classical authors in physics and this field of study of patterns and fractals, I realized, wow, there's part-whole relationships, there's symmetry, there's proportionality, there's all these things. The Fibonacci sequence repeats itself, the golden ratio even. The golden ratio exists in geomorphology. It exists in so many things. And it was, I think, even in the formation of crystals, I think it was maybe 11 years ago, it was recognized that there's a new structure that abides by the principles of the golden ratio. So it's basically what the Renaissance masters did. They
Right.
basically looked at nature and they just took the principles from nature and they put it in art. When you look at a wonderful painting, it's beautiful because it has these natural principles that the whole world operates on,
Yeah.
because that's how God created the whole world. So that was really fascinating, because the more I was doing research, the more I realized that, wow, this is, I'm getting to something. And at times when I was reading about these, it kind of got a little bit scary. As whoa, because you're reading about really large things somehow, like
Yeah.
at a level of principles, and that was really fascinating. I mean, not that I did something, but I just reading and thinking about these things. So I never felt like I was alienating myself from art. It was, I don't know,
Right.
it was really a blessing, and I never really imagined I could ever get to do both.
And that's a very, the way that you're speaking of even just data collection and applying it and connecting it to these different theories. And again, that's a perfect example. It was the Renaissance men, the luminaries of the Renaissance, and that natural principle, that natural philosophy that you're talking about. The golden mean and the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence. These mathematical and geometric structures that are then somehow we find them in music and in crystals, and then, oh my goodness, it's in art and it's in theology. This is very much that Neoplatonic Renaissance concept of prima materia, first materials and first things, and it's very interesting. I think Eliade says a lot about that in his book on alchemy. I can't dig up the exact quote right now, but all that to say is I really like it when people like you talk about science in that way, because there's so many people that talk about the hard and soft sciences as if there's not a sense of we're getting to something greater, or we're penetrating a deeper mystery. There's more of a sense of, well, we just need to calculate these things. We just need to understand these things. And it might improve human life. It might not. That doesn't really matter. Or then there's those people in various sciences, in transhumanism, in bioethics, that approach knowledge and approach the acquisition of knowledge, not in the way you're doing it, not in a net positive, understanding those things which God enables us to understand. But there are those people that use it to feed artificial intelligence, or they make the nuclear weapon of the next age. So not to get too far ahead of ourselves. I'm sure somebody right now is angrily typing, does David really think artificial intelligence is the nuclear weapon of our age? Yes, I do, first of all. So go ahead and type that. But yeah, very, very, very interesting. So am I getting a signed copy of your book?
Well, yeah, if you pre-order.
If oh, that's a very Romanian answer. Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. I will send you money. Oh my goodness. So
Let's just hope everything's gonna go well. I'm gonna send free copies as
will.
much as I can.
Of course it will. So did you want to talk about other tools besides that source code imaging that you used in your PhD?
Well, as I said, like complex issues require very simple approaches, like writing by hand. Go back to the primitive
Right.
principles. And my other assistants, this is
Very
my
nice.
leather bag, and it actually made a huge difference. I love fountain pens. I've been sober for 12 months. I haven't bought any new fountain pen. I managed to control my impulse. I don't have that many, but it was a really nice aesthetic addition to my research, because obviously there's so many times you go through really frustrating, and I have to say, like, I had a thesis, everybody had something against it, and I thought I'm never gonna push it through. So it was really, really not necessarily contested, but it was like nobody understood it. And even my
Right.
coordinator said, like, I've been looking for, I don't know, months and months for somebody to, or weeks, I don't know what she said, but as nobody could understand it. And
Oh wow.
and I had to convince people a lot, but in the end, it was really the final exam was really beautiful and memorable, because I had the former dean of the faculty, and he was from the old generation, and I think Eliade would have enjoyed it. He said something really beautiful, that something that I thought about it myself, that as a scientist, when the sense of awe and wonder ceases, you no longer do science. It's like we haven't yet defined life. We have to ask ourselves the fundamental questions, and we should never stop doing that, because we don't really advance in depth, so to say, as scientists without that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so yeah, that's but yeah, like having fountain pens, some nice inks. Early in the morning, I would wake up, just fill in my pen, and then start writing. And I color-coded things. I would read, which is really cool, because I actually copy quotes from everything that I read with one color, and then immediately I get ideas and I write with a different color what I think about it. So actually, in the end, my PhD thesis was all these notes, side notes that I had, basically.
And did you have I'm assuming you had a final draft that you did have to type up yourself, but were you able to present your notes as well to the final panel, the final examining committee?
No. It was just the type version. I had one of the professors who was really, really encouraging, and he always told me, like, I should kind of use my design skills as much as I can. That really mattered a lot. It was. I think it was a great achievement, because it was really hard. It overlapped with the pandemic. I had incredible professors. I had contact with incredible professors from the older generation, but it was so sad, because they passed, my second and third year of PhD, and it was really sad. And one of them was probably one of my greatest inspirations, and I tried to continue her work in that sense. So it had a deeper meaning for me, because when I presented, I put her picture, and I had a picture with her, and I made people cry, which is good. So there were tears at my final defense.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was good. Good times.
Wow. So
Yeah, this patterns, like looking at patterns, repetitions. This is Eliadean, I would say, Eliade's approach, and I try to have that. And I think I proved that it works in STEM too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess after 5 years and after, professors passing away and having to work through the pandemic and through lockdowns, what do you think, besides obviously this being the summation of your work so far, your magnum opus, what do you think is the most important lesson that has remained applicable throughout your artwork, throughout conversations that you've had, as a product, as a byproduct of working through the PhD? And then maybe after that, we can start looking at Eliade.
Wow, that's a fantastic question. There's a lot of things actually, and one of them is like um, character. I think you
Mm,
need a lot of you build your character because you have to defend yourself. You have to be able to take in a lot of critique,
yeah.
uh, and a lot of bad things happen. I mean, it's even scandals in the university, things that
Oh
are
wow.
humiliating. Sometimes it happens to a lot, um, and you really need to work through it, no matter how hard it is. You know, the fact that I worked through it. Obviously, I had encouragement from my family, which is invaluable. But
Mhm.
I wanted to quit like maybe 3,569 times or something like that.
You
Uh,
counted.
well, something, yeah, probably. But it's really refining your character, and it's really
Mm,
refining you as an individual. And I think when you do a hardcore PhD thesis, like something that is kind of new, you're not just applying a new method. You're not just applying a method to a new situation, which can happen today. It really refines you as an individual. It helps you understand people, working with people. Humility, first of all, humility,
mm.
because you read what other people have done, and it's humbling. It's continuously humbling, and yeah, there's that, and there's another thing that I was thinking that is really important, but I forgot it completely. So I hope it's gonna come back.
I'm
But
sure it'll come back.
yeah, I think that's one of the most valuable things that I can take from it. But it's just a feeling that you finished something that was so hard. It
Yeah.
was really, really hard, and you see yourself on the other side.
So I guess as someone who's not even done with my undergraduate. Ah, I'm not even done with my undergraduate.
No, but it's like my experience was a little bit unusual. So I had let's say, a more difficult experience because it could have been better, and other people have it better. You know, sometimes you can find a really good professor, and you know exactly what you want, and then you choose, I'm going to do these steps, and you make a plan for every month, you know, and you work
Sure.
consistently on it. And yeah, but also like yeah, this is one thing which sounds a little bit arrogant, but I hope it's not. If you look at something and you see there's logic in it, you have to trust it. And I
Mm.
remember like it's funny, one of my influences for choosing like this theoretical background is Michael Crichton, Jurassic Park books. I always love the Jurassic Park
I
books.
remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many deep quotes, and sometimes I go back to these books because I find that all my academic frustrations and the frustrations that I have regarding the industrial world, I
Mm.
find them there in the book, and it's yeah, that's exactly how it is.
So
But
read Jurassic Park. That's
yeah,
the
read
message
Jurassic
that we want
Park,
the audience to
exactly.
have.
Yeah, there was a quote that almost 95% of people tell you things all your life,
Mm.
but very often they're wrong. It's almost
Mm.
95% of the times they're wrong, you know.
Mm.
So you have to have that confidence not to question, know when to stop questioning yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something that for me was really big because I realized I saw that there was logic in this, and if logic is on my side, I have to prove it, and I'm gonna stand my ground.
Yeah.
So that was I think yeah.
Absolutely. So does the imposter syndrome ever go away? Is there ever a point where you're like, I'm actually qualified to do what I'm doing? Never.
No, no, forget about it.
Okay, good,
Live with
good,
it.
perfect,
Embrace it.
amazing.
No, I've
Wow.
seen some people saying that the imposter syndrome is for people who are incompetent, but no, no, like you have to be Um, it's funny. I've heard people talking about it, but I think as long as you keep yourself in the mediocrity level, then you're probably not going to think too much about it. But once you start like pushing and pushing and pushing, you see how far you have to go.
Yeah,
And it's like, yeah,
absolutely.
it's one of the most humbling experiences.
Mm.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
There's a little trauma in your eyes. You're looking
Yeah,
off into
you
the
can see
distance.
that. You will linger there.
Do we want to move over to Eliade now? Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for telling us about your
Absolutely.
PhD, and hopefully now that it's fully out there and the whole world knows that you're a PhD now, maybe we can start seeing some of the projects that you've been doing along with your artwork. I
Oh,
think everybody would be interested.
yeah, but I'm really sorry. I feel like I took too much time. We can
No,
jump straight
no,
into Eliade
no.
right now.
You didn't know. This is what we're here for. I don't have any cool academic things to talk about besides Eliade, so somebody has to fill the rest.
Speaking about trauma, we can talk about the terror of history.
Ah, yes. Ah, yes. Do you want to start on that?
Let me open this
No
because
worries. Take your time.
I'm still trying to juggle streaming and having multiple windows open. Yeah, I'm opening the book. I don't know. Do you have the book in front of you?
I do. Do you want me to start reading from it while you get it up?
Sure, sure. I mean, we're
Okay.
actually discussing right now, I think, the last chapter that addresses historicism. And I
Yeah.
also put a thumbnail on this video, Eliade's Antihistoricism. So,
So I'm gonna start from the survival of the myth of the eternal return. And then I think we can get through 10 pages today. I don't think that that'll be a problem at all. So if you have just this is just for the audience, making sure that we're keeping ourselves accountable. I'm working out of the Princeton edition, translated by Willard Trask. The title heading is The Terror of History. It's chapter 4, and then the subtitle heading is The Survival of the Myth of the Eternal Return. So I'm going to start. I'm going to remove the first sentence. It's just an introductory thing, and start in the middle paragraph. In short, it would be necessary to confront historical man, and note the parentheses around modern man, we'll get to that later, who consciously and voluntarily creates history, with the man of traditional civilizations who, as we have seen, had a negative attitude towards history. Whether he abolishes it periodically, whether he devaluates it by perpetually finding trans-historical models and archetypes for it, whether finally he gives it a meta-historical meaning, the man of the traditional civilizations accorded the historical event no value in itself. In other words, he did not regard it as a specific category of his own mode of existence. So I think that's chock full of implications. I think it shows, just to start us off, how modern I am, how modern we are. Because I guess while I was thinking about this, I was really relating it back to Romanian identity and how Romanians conceive of ourselves, right? Because there's a lot of different historical schools within Romanian identity and Romanian national consciousness. You have the Marxist school, where essentially all of Romanian history is, the poor, the țăran versus the boieri versus the domnitor, my computer keeps get that fixed. Tovarăș Ceaușescu saved us from the boieri, and then there's the protocronismus, right? We've always been here forever. Romanians have always been a thing. We originally come from the Thracodacians, and we are Hyperborean, right? We're Aryans descended from the gods. And then there's what I think is maybe the more romantic nationalist, and probably there's a combination. If we're being honest, there's a little bit of truth in all of the different historical interpretations of Romanian national consciousness of who we are as Romanians. But I think some of the romantic liberal nationalist conventions get it the most right. We are essentially a Latin island. Finish it for me, in a sea of Slavs, right? And that has been our history, not just Slavs, but before them Scythians, and before them the Celts and the Germans, and then Roman colonization and intermarrying. et cetera, et cetera. And it really made me think, well, what does it mean then to be a Romanian in early medieval Wallachia versus a Romanian in Renaissance Moldova versus a Romanian in 18th century Transylvania? Is it purely genetic? Is it purely ideological? Or is there a meta historical? Is there a transcendent experience of what it means to be Romanian? And I'm not saying this to the exclusion of other countries and other peoples. I could never be Punjabi because I don't have that transcendent experience of what it means to be from the Punjab, or Afrikaner from South Africa, or even some French Canadian person from Quebec. Right? There's a different history. There's a different historical trajectory. But what Eliade challenges us with, and maybe he doesn't challenge Romanian nationalism directly. Obviously, it's Eliade. He doesn't do that. But he makes us view history as not just the summary of human action. And that's a very hard thing to do. And I think in many ways, he challenges this idea of history, because modern man creates history to re-sacralize his world. Historical events become what ritual and myth were to archaic man. By engaging in history, we are trying to he has this term homo faber, where we attempt to refabricate time, to put ourselves in the office of time, and to speed up. And I think Hegel talks about this with the immanentization of the eschaton. In some way, man creating history is supposed to speed up, our final return to this golden age, illo tempore. Whereas archaic man wasn't worried about that. He returned to the mythical golden age every year at the new year, right? And in the liturgical rites of Christianity, when we have that, those of us that have the liturgical calendar, we have that return of cyclical time, of sacred time. So it's a hard thing to think about. And just to quote one more time at the bottom here, the archaic conception, and this is a dig at modern historical interpretations, the archaic conception, which we should designate as archetypal and ahistorical, and then the modern post-Hegelian conception, which seeks to be historical. So he takes a direct jab at some of the German schools of Lebensphilosophia, of criticism, etc. And you only realize how modern you are when you read Eliade. Full circle here. You only realize how much you don't want to live in historical time when Eliade puts it in your face and says, you think you live with God, but you don't anymore, right? And as Christians, that's such a hard. What do you mean? Of course I do. But I think Eliade challenges people of any religion, of any creed. What have you given up to participate in history? So I'll let you take the mic now, Ruxandra. That was a lot of different thoughts, but I won't apologize, because I think Eliade gives the same amount of thoughts in the same paragraph. So I'm just trying to match him.
Well, you're doing a great job, but since I talk so much about my PhD thesis, I'm happy that you take over the Eliade, because it's more in your, let's say, intellectual province than mine. But in a sense, it just reminded me of something that I did in my thesis, because we're talking about an anti-Hegelian view, and
Yeah.
Hegel had the historical dialectic hypothesis, the thesis, antithesis, with the social order, and then there's this. It's not causal, but more like deterministic view of history. So when I work on my thesis, I was thinking about this cause and effect, and I used in the beginning the word determinism,
Yeah.
even though I don't believe in determinism, like in the sense of like Hegel or the Marxist school or the German, this realm of philosophy. And I have a great professor, and he said, like, you should actually use causality instead of determinism, because it has the Marxist connotation still when you talk about determinism. And the archetypal man, as we talked before, archetypal man knew how to be fully human and exist and have relevance
Yeah.
by participating in this natural pattern, repeating celestial patterns. So history is cyclical in the sense that there's this important aspect to life that is transcendent to matter that we have to continuously be part of. And as long as we continue being part of that, then we kind of annul time because we're living as fully human beings. So that's, in a sense, the cyclicity. It's like we're repeating certain acts that God did in the beginning. And at some point, we hope that we're gonna have a redemption and we're gonna be redeemed as a whole world. You know, it's like this transcendent view. Like there's more to life than matter. Whereas the
Right.
historical determinist view, it's as you said in Marxist ideology, neo-Marxist ideology, you have a different eschatology because every religion has an eschatology. All the political ideologies have an eschatology. And in Marxism, you think about the golden age is always in the future when history will be annulled. You know,
Right.
you abolish the conflict between the classes, whereas in the natural patterns, you have this lost paradise, and you're constantly trying to return to that lost paradise.
Right.
And it's complex. You can't even say that it's necessarily circular. It's more like spiraling a little bit upwards.
Right.
Whereas in Marxism, it's just straight line somehow.
Right.
You go straight for that particular goal. Um, so yeah, that's what I think we could extrapolate as a pattern or principle. And it's interesting
Absolutely.
because this new Eliade mentions in parentheses modern man. You know, modern man
Mhm.
is a disrupted man. It's
Yeah.
disrupted from the archetypes. And it's interesting that when you look, as I talked about in my thesis, you step back and you just look at the whole picture and you see the patterns, the thresholds. What are the thresholds and the patterns of history? And then you see that all the civilizations that existed, all the schools of thought that they produced, they all have this convergent quality. They converge to the truth, which is the ultimate reality of God and the redemption of man, in a sense. And this has always been a reality, but for some reason now we just decided that it's not good enough for us, or we're much better than that. And this is the
Yeah.
ultimate disruption.
And
Um,
I think there's such a futility to it because even in these ideologies, because ideology is meant to supplant, traditional religious patterns, it can't escape it. It's so natural, it's so fully ingrained that Marxism, Hegelianism, Kantianism, any ism, there you don't escape religious frameworks because you cannot change human nature. Outside of a divine act, human nature is unchangeable. And that is the supreme sin that's in my opinion, I know that's a big statement, that's at the core of a lot of modern ideologies and a lot of modern developments of religion, and moving on to alchemy and artificial intelligence, you know, replacing the mediating work of God's creatures in time, in nature, in history. Marxism doesn't escape. At the end of the day, if you look at what Marx says about the perpetual revolution, Marx doesn't escape the cyclical time. He does not escape cyclical history. His revolution needs to self-perpetuate until there is a zeroing out of distinction. And that's, a few weeks ago, I put something like that on my Twitter. And, of course, everybody says, David doesn't know how to read Marx. Marxism isn't metaphysical, but that's the greatest lie that's ever been told. There's a quote by an Orthodox elder, I believe. I don't know the name right now, but the greatest deception that demons ever constructed was to deceive men into thinking that they don't exist and they don't speak. Demons, metaphysical evil things, don't want you to believe in them. They don't want you to believe that they have power and they can exercise malevolent influence on history. And if all of this is sounding, well, that's very religious of you, David and Bruxando, I thought this was a highly intellectual conversation. Welcome to Eliade. He is acting as an intellectual, has acted up until the Hegelian, up until the Enlightenment split. even up to the Renaissance. The Renaissance man, this man of science and learning and flight and technology and geometry, he was still homo religiosus. He still lived in this synthesis of Christian and pagan worldviews. So you're not going to escape it. And I think Hegel understands this. I think Hegel maybe is more honest about this than Marx is. Obviously, Hegelianism is not purely secular, and obviously, the God of Kant isn't purely secular. But there's still this we can make God do things, and human action will spur God into doing things and completing history. Where does this come from? What lie is inspired by this? Where is the the origin of this? And a few weeks ago, I spoke with Sam Wilde about his Prometheus painting, and part of Prometheus's original sin is that he brings that knowledge of creation essentially to mankind. It's sort of the Lucifer of the Greek world, as it were. And who knows? It could be something like that. But I think that the futility of historical determinism, the futility of historicity in general, is that man cannot give meaning to his own actions. And Eliade says this time and again, right? Anything that we do that is important, that moves and shakes the universe, that influences the world, is because there is a divine mandate, a divine pattern, a divine ritual that has been set in place before time ever existed, before we ever started the clocks. And that's what we model on. That's what we build on. We do these things because God has done them, or because God has set the example. And then I guess to bring it back into the Christian worldview, to talk about making history in the Christian sense, right? If you do something that is not holy, right? That is not, or that is, in the middle, in a moral gray zone, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And I think Kierkegaard wrestles with this. I think René Girard, in my small amount of reading him, interacts with this idea. But if you don't do something that is intentionally creative, like your artwork or like your PhD, are you actively existing in those in-between spaces? And that's what modern man can't answer. That's what Eliade talks about, modern man's anxiety. He cannot answer whether or not he exists while he's building a computer microchip, right? So I think there's a lot of implications of this. I think that we need to take it seriously because it's a very serious, not a threat, but a proposition for Christian metaphysics, and for metaphysics generally speaking. That's very important. That was a lot. I want to read a page that Eliade writes about this, but do you have thoughts before I do that?
Just a very quick thought, and it
Yes.
has to do with resilience, since I started with my thesis, because I'm drawing parallels right now.
Absolutely.
If you look at modern man, it's what you said, basically what you said, and I'm trying to rethink it somehow. Not rethink it, just kind of put it in the context of resilience. We have very low resilience as modern people, because obviously the spiritual part of our lives, what makes us truly human, is the spiritual part of man, according to Eliade, the homo religiosus. We're no longer, modern man in the Western world, secularized, is no longer homo religiosus. But that decreases the resilience, because there's no causal understanding of bad things happening. So in the past, let's say in Eliade's terms, the archaic man, so any disruption of this kind of continuous everyday life, like a war or a famine or a plague, it was a consequence of something. It was an infraction of norms. Somebody sinned, and therefore this happened. Or it was God's will, or it was written, and it was this metaphysical understanding of the world, and that gave man a lot more resilience, a lot more stamina, let's say spiritual stamina, to cope with things. But now, being devoid of our own humanity, which is actually the deepest need of our soul, is to worship God and have this understanding of the world, we no longer have that resilience. And it's interesting, because I wanted to I found an article, I think Lola, she posted about it if you know her. It was somebody, it just escapes my mind. But if
No
you look at
worries.
people who work in the AI industry, like Silicon Valley, they seem to be delusional. They think about aliens. They have this doomer view of things that is completely out there, like conspiracy theories, all of these things. And obviously, if you don't believe in God, you can stop believing in anything else, pretty much anything. Because I think what people really don't understand is this natural, healthy kind of skepticism that actually stems from a belief in God and questioning everything else that goes against your main principle of living, that is worshiping your God. So
Absolutely.
that's a falsity to say that I believe, therefore I'm naive and I don't have skepticism. Because I'm a Christian, I'm talking about myself. I'm far more skeptical about everything else than a lot of people that I know. I really
Yeah.
believe everything. And so that kind of resilience part is what's the main issue with
Yeah.
with our society today, I think.
And we lost so much in the breakage. I don't think people understand how much we truly lost. And even not just in the degeneration of things like keeping a sacred calendar, but even more real, like we're talking about these people in Silicon Valley that are so separated from a conception of classical theism to where something bad happening. And I get it. This isn't to eliminate human pain or human suffering. It can definitely be hard to have faith sometimes. It can definitely be difficult to understand why there is pain. But
Absolutely, we're not mocking this part
yeah,
at
yeah,
all. We're
yeah,
just
yeah.
getting
No,
a symptom.
yeah. And you didn't do that at all. But there's definitely that strand of it. And it's interesting because sometimes I think that people who have serious problems with Christian metaphysics or Christian social doctrine have this idea of what they are in their head, and they haven't researched, they haven't really expanded their horizons. Like, well, why would God be real? Why would a good God let this happen? Um, and that's such a de demythologized understanding, a desacralized understanding of the spiritual gifts that come from the Christian life or from the religious life. That's we're never promised a perfect life. We're never promised a pain-free life. We're never promised a life without suffering. Whether it's because of the first fall of man, the first time that we were kicked out of the golden age, the Garden of Eden, or whether that's a necessary step on the journey to becoming perfect, right? To eventually standing before Saint Peter at the pearly gates of heaven, or however you want to say it. So those are my thoughts, but I'll read a page on some classical Christian historical understandings of religion. This is on page 143. If anyone is following along, if we turn to the other traditional conception, that of cyclical time and the periodic regeneration of history, whether or not it involves the myth of eternal repetition, we find that although the earliest Christian writers began by violently opposing it, it nevertheless, in the end, made its way into Christian philosophy. We must remind ourselves that for Christianity, time is real because it has meaning, the redemption. So this is really important. The Christian does not deny history, but it doesn't affirm that history exists for itself. A straight line, and he's quoting this from Gnosis in Time by a French gentleman in the footnotes. A straight line traces the course of humanity from initial fall to final redemption. And the meaning of this history is unique because the incarnation is a unique fact. Indeed, as chapter 9 of the epistles to the Hebrews and First Peter emphasize, Christ died for our sins only once for all. It is not an event subject to repetition, which can be reproduced several times. The development of history from this point on, the last 2,000 years, is governed and oriented by a unique fact, a fact that stands entirely alone. Consequently, the destiny of all mankind, together with the individual destiny of each one of us, are both likewise played out once for all in a concrete and irreplaceable time which is that of history and life. And then he goes on to say, it is this linear conception of time and history, which is outlined by St. Basil, St. Gregory, St. Augustine, Irenaeus of Lyon. So I guess, we can sort of talk about, maybe not now, but just on the periphery of this, the coincidence of opposites that's in the philosophy of Nicholas of Cusa during the Renaissance. And there's this tension within Christianity because every year on the Christian calendar we have Pashte, we have Easter, we have Advent, we have Christmas. So the incarnation happens, right? And then the rest of the year liturgically we live out the life of Christ, whichever denomination you belong to. Everyone's church talks about the entire life of Christ. Everyone's church acknowledges Christmas and then Easter, incarnation, redemption, crucifixion. So that repeats cyclically, but then these things have only ever happened once in history. So the novelty, and I'm careful with that word novelty, the consummation of the Christian philosophy of history and time is that these things are cyclical, but they have only ever happened once. And it's hard for us to understand that, right? It's hard for us to put the line through the circle and have a conception of that. But I think it also reflects the obtuse nature of time, the fact that time is essentially a human construct, but then God also steps in and acknowledges that human construct and acknowledges time in his own perfect plan, right? No man knows the hour or the day or the time. So I don't know. What do you make of that? Because if I'm being honest, that's one of the facets of Eliade that I don't necessarily have trouble understanding. I think it's perfectly understandable. I don't always know how to assimilate that as a Christian.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to understand things. You can understand things mathematically, you can understand the mechanisms, or you can understand things in principle. You can grasp them, and both means of understanding are equally important and relevant. I was thinking about, there's a beautiful, I'm not going to quote it in Russian now, but Pushkin, the poet, wrote a series of really beautiful verses. And one that stood out to me is that the genius is a friend of paradox. I really love that because the world is full of apparent paradoxes. And there's so many things in the physical world that we don't really understand. If you read about quantum physics, and there's constantly something new that we learn about quantum physics, and the principles at a subatomic level, they're so contradictory to normal mechanics and even logics, and we don't understand. I understand it because, for instance, I feel like I'm a subatomic particle. When you look at me, observe me, I'm not myself. If I'm by myself in the room, I can think differently. I can come up with better ideas. So this idea, you observe a particle and then it changes the manifestation. It's either particle or wave. All of these things are very paradoxical to our understanding.
Yeah.
And when we accept the idea of God, the definition of God is the cause of all causes, the ultimate cause, the reason for everything which is in existence. He is perfect, and he is outside of time because he's this immovable, perfect being. He's not changing. That means he is outside of time, and time is a creation of God. So God has control of time. And now we have also in quantum physics retroactive causation, which is studied. It makes sense, but when you lose yourself and it's studied, then you feel like, where am I? It's almost like you're lost. Alice in Wonderland. The cause becomes the effect, like in retrospect. So it's an interesting thing. So we see that time, if God is God, he has complete command over time and control. But we have to live in this time segment. So you have to accept these things. Sometimes you just have to accept them. You have to
Right.
start with certain premises, and then everything else will become clearer. Because you have to have that let's say, way of argumentation, not necessarily deduction. I have to understand everything so I can move from here. Sometimes you just have to accept certain things.
Right.
And it is no contradiction. It might be like an apparent paradox, but there's no contradiction in the cyclical versus a fulfilled fact, like the resurrection of Christ, because he went. The Bible says that he went down and he preached to the lost souls. He came back, so it was people who already died. There's a mystery there, we don't know, but we know that salvation applies to all of humanity, and all of humanity. We talk about humanity from Adam and Eve up until present, because since they fell into sin, they've been waiting for the Messiah. We see that in Genesis already. People knew that the Messiah will come. So we're just repeating these things until the final redemption of humanity. The act is already there. We're just preparing for the final act, but we're kind of one foot in heaven, one foot on earth as a Christian.
Right.
So that duality, which is not a dialectic, and it's not a polemic, and it's not a contradiction.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. I like that a lot. That was very helpful. I think that's essentially the rest of that part of the chapter. So if you're okay, we can move on to the difficulties
Absolutely.
of historicism. And would you like me to start reading it, or would you like to start?
No, I would like you to read, because I have it in Kindle, and I'm just following you. And I think because you already have, I have some notes, and I can go back.
Okay. No worries. So again, if we're following along in the book, this is 147. The reappearance of cyclical theories in contemporary thought is pregnant with meaning. Incompetent as we are to pass judgment upon their validity, we shall confine ourselves to observing that the formulation in modern terms of an archaic myth betrays at least the desire to find a meaning and a trans-historical justification for historical events. So again, even if we say we're not bothered with these things, and there doesn't have to be a framework to understand these things, we still look for it. We still look for patterns in history. And what is a historical pattern but a transcendent truth? So I'll continue. Thus, we find ourselves once again in the pre-Hegelian position. The validity of the historicistic solutions from Hegel to Marx being implicitly called into question. And this is a very, very good line. I have this like highlighted and scribbled over like 8 different times. From Hegel on, every effort is directed towards saving and conferring value on the historical event as such, the event in itself and for itself. So somehow, ex nihilo, out of nothing, the event, I clapped. There is historical transcendent meaning in me just clapping. Obviously, there's not, right? Obviously, I do not confer the value that me clapping has, right? I don't have any sort of intrinsic properties or powers that I get from on high that I don't know if God clapped, right? I'm not consciously reabsorbing this ritual or repeating the ritual of God clapping, his proverbial hands. So I'll continue. In his study of the German Constitution, Hegel wrote that if we recognize that things are necessarily as they are, so there's no other meaning, right? There's no grander ulterior motive. There's no esoteric hidden thing. That is, that they are not arbitrary and not the result of chance. We shall at the same time recognize that they must be as they are. A century later, the concept of historical necessity will enjoy a more and more triumphant practical application. In fact, all cruelties, aberrations, and tragedies of history have been and still are justified by the necessities of the historical moment. So instead of assigning the category of sin and evil to something like the Holocaust or the massacre in Yugoslavia at Srebrenica or the massacre of Romanian peasants at Fontana Alba, instead of assigning a metaphysical value to that, instead of thinking about how do we propitiate God for this, how do we call on God to sustain us through this, it's justified because it happened. So there's no genuine other power, there's no higher cause, there's no higher meaning. So you can see this gets very sad, this gets very depressing very quickly.
It's very utilitarian, and also as well, because it's just Yeah, it's a utilitarian view, very mechanistic, and human beings are just ants in a sea
Right.
of historical processes.
Right.
There's no value or yeah, I
And
guess.
Eliade does make mention that he says probably Hegel did not intend to go so far, and I do believe that in some instances, because I do think Hegel isn't able to fully replace God as such. I think he's able to interfere with a lot of ways that God unfolds the universe and unfolds history in. And so I'll keep reading. But since he had resolved to reconcile himself with his own historical moment, he was obliged to see in every event the will of the universal spirit. This is why he considered reading the morning, this is a quote, reading the morning papers a sort of realistic benediction of the morning. For him, only daily contact with events could orient man's conduct in his relations with the world and with God. So, me picking up my phone and playing 3 hours of Angry Birds is how I connect with God, because I'm connecting with historical events like the creation of the iPhone, the creation of the Angry Birds app, the development of artificial intelligence technology. And that's my benediction. There you go. I've had my time with God today. Goodbye. I'm a good person. I'm a religious man, and I'm comfortable at home. I'm comfortable with my own existence in the world. That's pathetic. And I think we've seen that it's ultimately failed. I think we tried to do that. My computer is being so, I don't think my computer wants this conversation to happen. It's being very, very annoying. There we go.
I mean, there's no interruption. I can hear you without any interruptions.
There we go. Okay, good. I think we've tried this. This, history just happens. Things just happen, and there's no real, there's no greater meaning to it. And at the end of the day, it leaves us without hope, and it leaves us without greater meaning. And we ultimately, as humans, we need greater meaning. Modern man isn't so modern. He's not that far off, because he's still trying rituals. He's still trying to connect to transcendent ahistorical meaning. He recognizes it, but he's doing it in a way that rejects the premise and the cause. The premise and the cause is God, is God's actions, is sacred history, or is sacred action. So, in our last 10 minutes, I've taken up 85% of the podcast. My apologies.
I don't
But
think so. I think I
okay.
still have the majority of.
But I want to hear some of your thoughts on that, and maybe, I think it's less clear today where the majority of the human population stands with this, because I think even with a lot of advances in modern technology, especially in information technologies, has had the most hypersonic, evolution of any technology. I don't think people really believe this anymore. I think modern man is almost at the threshold of post-modernity with his spirituality. I do think man is humanity is reintegrating a essentially religious view of themselves. But I don't know. What do you think? I see a glimmer at the end of the tunnel. I don't necessarily think that everyone is going to, turn to Christianity tomorrow, and there'll be mass conversions everywhere. Although that'd be great. I wouldn't mind that. Hallelujah, right? But what are your thoughts?
I like that the paragraph on Marxism and Hegel's addiction to being constantly connected to the news, and that was the meaning of his life every day. That's how he found meaning for his life, to always look at the event. It's somehow like confusing the creator with the creation. It's a sort of pantheism at a different context. It's analogical to it in that sense, because we confuse the cause with the effect. As you said, it was a brilliant presentation, and I wish you could continue talking, because I don't have anything of value probably to contribute to this idea.
Sure you do. Of course you do.
It's very, like, it's you were talking, you're basically describing what's going on today, because I also get a lot of comments like it's time to move on with things. Like, we're in the 21st century. We're no longer thinking or living like the primitive peasants of 50 years ago, which is
They
like,
were living better than us. They were so
yeah,
much happier. They were
yeah,
so much
absolutely. They were,
happier than God.
Yeah, and it's we don't question things. We just look at, oh, there's this new technological breakthrough. We have AI. I mean, AI is great to some extent. I use AI because I want to create complex codes. I never worked in coding, but I also want to be
Mm,
able to do it myself, and it's good because I have access to this libraries, database. But like what is going on right now, we don't have any protection, the theft of intellectual property, because everything that is generating in the creative sphere where AI is being used quite a lot, it's basically theft of intellectual property because it's using what everybody else created. It's just
right.
making um, a mix of everything else. We don't, like, a lot of people, like, whatever you come up with, even though it's something that authors and philosophers and people have said this is going to happen and this is going to be bad, and everybody, yeah, this sounds like Antichrist. But when this happens, everybody, this is, yeah, we all going to buy it, we're all going to accept it. So
Right.
this passivity in people.
It doesn't seem like there's a handbrake on it. It seems like we're
Yeah.
on this train that just keeps going faster and faster, and we're throwing more coal into the boiler, and we don't know what the end is, but we so desperately want to reach that end. The train wants to find out that there's a wall instead of a tunnel, and it's a very self-destructive impulse. But that's because we've taken out this meaning. We've taken out the light at the end of the tunnel. We don't believe in God, so why wouldn't there be a wall at the end of the train tunnel? And I don't think
I hope
I
you
don't
didn't hear
think
me coughing. I hope I turned off the microphone when I was coughing.
I am not bothered by it. It's totally fine. See, you're living like a peasant from 50 years ago. You're dying of tuberculosis on screen. Look at that. You're returning. Myth of the eternal return is playing out. Live stream, people. But I
Well,
guess
tuberculosis was a disease of the intellectuals, of the refined. You're
yes,
pale, you're suffering, you're
yes,
philosophical.
very
I'm
much
not
so.
like that.
Very sensitive soul. But I like something that our mutual friend David Lescalit does at the end of his podcast. He sort of asks whoever he's interviewing, whoever he's talking to, for a practical application. And I think we should probably talk about that because I get a little depressed when I read some of the end of Eliade's stuff, especially with historicity. And I'm happy that I don't view history in this way. And I guess some of the ways that we've spoken that we both follow Christianity, but I think at the heart at a lot of that is prayer, and is faith. And sometimes you have to have faith that moves mountains. And a lot of times, and again, this goes into something that abolishes time. I think prayer does a lot to abolish history and to abolish time, because when you're in prayer, the Christian conception is that in some way you are in front of the judgment throne of Christ. In some way you're in a different realm while you are praying, or you're attempting to be, at the very least. You're taking yourself out of the events around you and placing yourself in timelessness. And so I think just on the practical application part, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. For me, prayer is one of those things, but also intellectual exercises. I think a lot of people are afraid of assigning transcendent qualities to, like, reading big academic tomes. Don't be afraid of that. That can absolutely be a way to take you out of history, to take you out of desacralized time. One of the books that I'm reading right now, where is it? Where's the book that I'm reading? Oh, here it is. One of the books that I'm reading right now is Scandinavian book. That's exciting. There you go. By Snorri Sturluson. But the prose Edda, the Icelandic sagas, reading about Norse mythology and these things. Great Christians of times gone past have read, pagan myths and gotten good things from it. So don't be ashamed to, don't embrace anti-intellectualism. Because God gives us knowledge and intellect for a reason. And I know I'm not talking to you about that, Ruxandra. That's not anything that you could be accused of. But I think that is some people's impulse. You okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
but
good.
give me 2 seconds. If you can speak for 10 more seconds so I can finish coughing.
Sure. And so I guess the practical application part to all of this is reread the fairy tales. If you're English or whoever, read Joffrey of Monmouth's The History of the Kings of Great Britain. Bring yourself into history, into pre-modern history, because if you do that, in some way, you are living in that sacred time. And I know that's a very fancy way of saying read the Brothers Grimm and read the fairy tales, but I mean it. I really do mean that. Read about Manole and his well and Futfrumos, and embrace these things. That's my cover up for Ruxandra dying. So Ruxandra, now that you are back from the dead, Lazarus, please give your thoughts.
First of all, I'm not dying. I just want to make this clear. I'm not fragile. I'm not sickish. I do get sick sometimes, but I try to take care. I just had, I think it might have been some branch of COVID. And I have this reminiscent coughing that I can't get rid of. But I've been biking today, and I think I'm gonna start my running. Anyways, everything that you said was really, really cool and valuable. And I mean, I don't know if I have any contribution. It's basically to remind the listeners that it's all good. We do not live in determinism. We live in causal terms. And God redeems history. God redeems our past. We talked about retroactive causation. And God can turn things in a fraction of a second before we can even
Absolutely.
realize. If you read the Old Testament, all the stories when God changed famine into flourishing, like events that you can't possibly fathom, but when, wow, this actually happened, and it was from God. A lot of the things that we go through, we can't really understand in the present moment, but more like in retrospect. And also every phase of history, we're going through a phase as usual. We have this cyclical pattern, and that is true. History has this cyclical pattern. We have Ecclesiastes, and Ecclesiastes sounds like it's very nihilistic, but it presents the world how it actually is, the vanity of absolutely everything. If you don't look upwards, if you just have the horizontal view of things, then you're in nihilistic ground, and there's no happiness. If you see things with clarity of mind and vision and understanding, there's
Yeah.
just depression and despair. But we have this verticality, and we know that God works at all times. And as you said, prayer happens. And there's also this natural way of reaching a saturation point after which things will turn. And I think you read a lot. I think if you do some research, you're going to find data showing that the newer generations are starting to go to church even though their parents were
Yeah.
atheists, because all of these things are probably necessary to really scare us, to put back the fear of God in our hearts, because we need that. Sometimes we need a little bit of fear. And
Absolutely.
yeah, as I said, there's every ideology has an eschatology. This Eliade uses this term ekpyrosis, like everything is going to be burnt, in fire. And we have that obsession in every culture, in Hollywood culture, movie culture, this doomsday idea.
Right.
But
Ragnarok.
yeah, if you're rooted in truth, and which we believe the truth is God and Christ, the Logos, then there's nothing to fear. Everything
There's
is
nothing new upon the face of the earth.
absolutely, everything's the same. There's nothing new under the sun, and there's only hope to look forward. Because for a Christian, you're outside of time already. So
Yeah.
every step forward, every day is closer to heaven. So it's just optimism, and that's not to reduce pain and suffering, about which
No,
we
no.
can talk about at a different time, because that's a complex issue. It doesn't need an explanation, you just need to find meaning. Meaning doesn't necessarily mean that you have a mechanistic explanation for things.
Right.
It's this deeper understanding. So yeah,
Well,
prayer
this
and
was really fun. I really enjoyed this. I'm
thank
so
you
happy
very
you
much,
could
David.
talk.
That was wonderful. I had a great
Yeah.
time.
I'm so happy you could talk about your PhD. Now we're waiting for the book with bated breath. So don't disappoint. Yeah?
No, I spoke publicly about it. Now I have no other option. I have to.
Now you have to put doctor in your name, PhD in your Twitter handle. We have to call you Dr. Ruxandra, you know, the whole 9 yards.
You have to put it on the door. And like in Germany, they have you put your name on the door, but you also have like Magister or Doctor. So I'm gonna be Frau Dr. Ionche. That's how you're gonna call me.
Perfect.
That's my name.
Perfect.
Leon, that's my name. Okay, thank you, David. Thank you
Well,
very
thank you,
much.
Ruxandra.
A lovely stream. I hope everybody enjoyed. You can leave questions in the comments. Me and David, we're gonna make sure to respond. And yeah, see you next time, David.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ruxandra.
Have a great day. God bless
You
you.
as well. Bye-bye.